Just about a month ago, I travelled to Los Angeles to see the unveiling of the Ford Mustang Mach E electric car. It's Ford's first long-range electric car, and as I detail in a video here, it's the first electric car that Ford is really keen on selling, even if the name is pretty controversial and upsetting a lot of hardened Mustang fans out there. If you've watched this channel and the coverage from that said launch event, you'll know about the car's specs and its starting price. You may also know about the fact that Ford has now taken enough deposits from its customers that it's now sold out of its Mustang Mach E first edition in the US, and almost sold out in Europe as well. If you've watched YouTube in the last few days or browsed other news sites, however, you may also have seen the video exposing how little Ford dealerships currently know about this car. The video, I'll link to it in the description below, is the brainchild of the EV Bright YouTube channel, which called 15 different Ford dealerships in their area to ask about the Mach E and the chronicled responses that they got from dealership staff. These responses ranged from complete confusion. The receptionist who answered at one dealership had never even heard of the Mach E, while others had heard about it but didn't really know much more, to a demonstration of moderate competency, and then perpetuation of electric vehicle myths, and in some cases a pretty hard sell in favour of a non-plug-in hybrid. And during the video itself, it feels from the editing and the meme-tastic soundtrack that EV Bright's goal here is to highlight how terrible conventional auto dealers are. At first glance, they all appear that way. And after all, who would want to buy a car from a dealership who doesn't know about the car that you're wanting to buy? But there are some significant factors I think we need to take into account here, things that EV Bright isn't. And these things provide some much needed context to this all, and I think could change your opinion of that video. First up, let's make no bones about the fact that the Mach E is a brand new car that's not yet been given an official launch date, other than the late 2020 that we were given in LA. While the model itself has been greenlit for production, final specifications and trim details haven't been made public yet, nor have details about pricing. And that's totally normal and not unusual at all. Even Tesla does this. I mean, final specifications for Model 3 were not made public until first deliveries were made. I seem to recall that similar things took place for the Model X and Model S, which again, to be honest, is in line with what the auto industry does. Actually, scratch that. It's not. Auto industry practice is to launch spec sheets and pricing just prior to cars arriving in dealer lots. So, because Tesla does direct deliveries, things are different little, but I digress. Auto industry norms are that the car is announced or revealed. Then there's a period of time where customers can register their interest for information and sometimes put down a deposit. Then, closer to series production launch, the automaker sets up a dealer training program where dealerships who want to sell the car can send their staff to get properly trained on the vehicle. And this is the super important factor here. Dealerships have to send their staff to get trained on new cars. Their salespeople get to learn about the cars and drive them and find out about the different packages and options. And their technicians and service teams get certified on the repair practices required. Only then does a dealership become officially able to sell and service a car. In the case of large volume popular models, maybe the entire sales and service staff are trained in batches. But on smaller, more niche market cars, some dealerships only send a handful of staff to train. And this isn't just an electric car thing either. It's true of all models. And dealerships which don't do a high volume of sales on a particular model may just not bother to spend the money on training and therefore aren't specialists in some cars. Have you ever wondered why some dealers don't sell high-end performance models? Well, it's because they didn't bother to certify for it. Why is this important? Well, in the case of the Mustang Mach E, the lack of knowledge from dealers, I'm pretty sure, is down to a lack of training from Ford. But because the car is still nearly a year from launching, dealership training hasn't even begun yet. That'll probably happen in about 6 months' time. I'm guessing by which point dealerships should then start to know more about the car. Don't just think this is a car thing either. The new Apple Mac Pro was announced a long time ago, and we knew some of the basic stuff like specs, but we didn't know the actual pricing and final options until Apple opened up the order books this week. Had you gone into an Apple store before that point to ask, well, the staff would probably know just about as much as you could find out online. And some staff would have been as equally clueless about it as these Ford dealerships were about the Mustang Mach E. Aha, you might say. But what about all those regular car dealerships where the dealers talk about new models quite happily? Well, in the case of next generation versions of existing cars, let's take a Mustang for example, you're going to have salespeople who are already familiar with the gasoline Mustangs and may find it far easier to talk about new models ahead of them going to training. But the Mustang Mach E is a totally new model for Ford, and electric is a pretty new concept for many Ford dealerships. They've not really had to focus on selling an electric car before, so they have limited knowledge to pull from. A great example can be found in the aforementioned video. In one instance, the member of sales staff who talks about the Mustang Mach E is able to discuss charging and range, presumably because they're either someone who has a personal interest in the car or because they may already be an electric vehicle specialist who currently sells Ford's only other electric model, the Ford Focus Electric. So what can we learn from this video? Well, that's pretty simple. Ford has a lot of work ahead of itself to train its dealer network on both electric cars and the Mustang Mach E. And it also needs to assume that its dealer network currently doesn't know anything about plug-in cars because to date, the majority of its dealers don't. As to salespeople spouting nonsense or trying to get people to buy something else, yeah, that's not cool. That's not kosher. But again, if your job is to sell people things and you're faced with getting a sale today on something you know, rather than get a sale in a year on something you don't, you're probably going to do everything you can do to get the sale to go through today. That misinformation though, well, that is a problem. It's a societal problem. People, dealerships especially, need to be okay with the phrase, I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that because I haven't, insert applicable reason here. Let me find someone who can help you or find the answer out for you. Had this experiment been carried out the week before dealer sales began, I would be having a very different conversation with you right now, and I would be totally justified in sounding lots of alarm bells. After all, I've had my fair share of facepalm moments at dealerships when traditional car salespeople have told me complete and utter hogwash about plug-in cars that were on sale at the time. I've even had someone in a service department tell me I can't use winter tyres on my car. And in those situations, I think it is fair and right to make a fuss about it. But months ahead of a launch, when we don't know whether dealer training has even happened and the car is being launched that's a relatively new one and unheard of before, well, I'm afraid that's closer to clickbait than I'd like. That's it. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you next time.